Welcome back to PCW, where today we are reviewing Monday Night Raw. Hi everyone, I'm Tom Collihew from PCW, and last night's Raw suffered from some similar issues. There was a constant element of repetitivity in a lot of the feuds. That said, the wrestling was very high quality, and it was very much rescued by a nice little angle at the end. Remember to click like before we start, hit subscribe if you haven't, and let's jump in. Raw started with their usual opening promo, but this was a very brief one, setting up what was going to be happening with Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre going into Hell in a Cell. The plan at the moment very much seems to have those two compete in the Cell, along with Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley, which we'll get to a little bit later. Bobby Lashley was gifted the Godfather's hose? That's the feeling I got from this segment, but in reality it was really quite simple. MVP was setting the scene for an open challenge that would not involve Drew McIntyre and Braun Strowman. Drew still tried it. It's his way. We would see several occasions later on in the night, starting around halfway through Raw, where big names and small names alike declared that they would be challenging Bobby Lashley later on. Sheamus was the first, both members of Retribution in mid-Ascension cosplay were second, and finally Damien Priest later on did say after a match that he might challenge Bobby Lashley for the WWE Championship. None of these did so. Our opening match was AJ Styles vs Elias, and these two were tag partners last week, and they're both heels, and this was confusing. It's not the feud I expected, but the reason we have this feud is to essentially draw out the tag division a little bit longer. The Viking Raiders haven't been featured much, but they are still in line for a championship shot against Omos, essentially because they're the only people who can physically compete with him. Meanwhile, RK Bro is getting a lot of love but needs time to develop, so this is a time-killing feud, which also gets Elias back in the spotlight a little bit. It's just a shame it brings Jackson Ryker with him. Styles would get the win via DQ after interference from Jackson Ryker, essentially pulling him off the apron. Omos would defend his boy, but AJ Styles still got a severe beating, which suggests that maybe Styles and Omos are going babyface now? Matt Riddle tried to force Randy Orton to apologise to the New Day, but he refused. In Kofi's words, a reptile dysfunction. That was easily line of the night. The end result of this would be a match made for the end of the first hour, New Day member Kofi Kingston to take on Randy Orton. Alexa Bliss interviewed new women's tag team champions Natalya and Tamina. Working in the wrestling media, I've seen a lot of people who interview exactly like this. It was really awkward. Angel Garza beat up Drew Gulak again and fed him a rose instead of anally inserting it this time, which makes a nice change. Variety is the spice of life. Matt Riddle and Randy Orton made their entrance for the second hour draw segment together, Matt Riddle just behind Randy Orton, singing his goddamn heart out. I mean, like, am I boring because I don't always sing along to Randy's theme? I think I am. I'm having a crisis here. The match was short, lasting only 5 minutes. Kofi Kingston with the roll-up to beat Randy Orton, and not for the first time this year. Randy Orton has been shown to be susceptible to a roll-up and a half. Afterwards, Riddle and Xavier Woods teased some tension, which suggests that we're really not sure whether Riddle and RK Bro in general are going to go face or heel. It feels very Sheamus and Cesaro right now. Sonya Deville and Adam Pearce kicked out the rest of the women's division as unimportant so they could listen to Charlotte have a whine. Charlotte essentially talked them into giving her a guaranteed shot against Ripley if she could beat Asuka tonight. Asuka gets no such shot, but this really made you feel as a wrestling fan, oh, it's Charlotte, she's never going to lose this. The women's tag team title division continues to have the shortest matches in pretty much wrestling history, with only a 3-minute match between defending new champions Natalya and Tamina and their challengers, the former champions Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler. This ultimately didn't really come to a match because Alexa Bliss interfered, set Reginald on fire, and that was that for Shayna Baszler taking the loss from a heart attack. So literally, set fire, someone had a heart attack, and it was over. Alexa Bliss is literally the Fiend. The Fiend, by the way, has just gone home. This is fairly regular for Bray. He spent very little time actually at WWE during the COVID era, and I've heard nothing about anything else. Sheamus and Ricochet had a great match that lasted about 15 minutes, and this is the beginning of a real corner being turned as regards wrestling quality for the night. Sheamus, as we know, has been hitting the highs pretty much since the beginning of the year. His feud with Drew McIntyre was very well received, his match with Bobby Lashley was very well received, and of course his win at WrestleMania was very well received. He continues that trend. Ricochet, meanwhile, after the open challenge at the weekend, showed more personality here than he has in his entire WWE run so far. Whatever they're doing, it's working. This seems like the Apollo Crews method of, okay, let's give them some personality though because they're boring as hell. It's what they're doing with Garza as well. A lot of people lower down the card are being shown off a lot more under this current administration, and that's a very good thing. Ricochet did not win the match. Sheamus won a clean heel win. But for me, I think this one could continue. Even if it's just a 2-week run, they got more buzz around Ricochet on social media than they have for a very long time. The match for our second hour draw segment, as you might expect, was Charlotte Flair vs Asuka. And apart from a couple of botchy, sloppy moments in the middle, this really delivered, particularly when Asuka got into her rhythm of reversing things into submission holds. There was one awkward spot on the top rope where Charlotte Flair did a backflip and landed on her face, and I don't know what the hell that was actually supposed to be, but the match quality itself was very, very high. The finish, however, came down to Rhea Ripley. Now, Ripley came to the outside and sat next to commentary without actually being in commentary. She was involved in a distraction late on, coming up onto the apron, distracting Charlotte Flair, and this allowed Asuka to get herself a roll-up and a 1-2-3 victory that I gotta be honest, I did not see coming. A very good moment for Asuka, getting a very good amount of heat back as it were, but there is still very much the plan to have Charlotte versus Rhea in a Hell in a Cell at the upcoming pay-per-view. Asuka, after this, seems like she will be written out a little bit. I spoke at length about what the future plans are for Damien Priest on my Twitch channel on Friday. The idea being at the moment, they're going to throw stuff at the wall and see what works, but they are really suffering because they can't commit to a storyline that gets him away from The Miz and Morrison. Well, if you don't already know, The Miz has torn his ACL and will be out for at least 6 months. So, after being eaten by zombies, we're not going to see The Miz for a while. This should be Damien Priest moving on at this point, having beaten John Morrison in a lumberjack match that featured a hugely excitable Nikki Cross. I honestly believe Nikki Cross might have live produced that match, simply by how hyper she was being. It was a fairly standard lumberjack match. It lacked the excitement that comes with zombies, but at the same time there was enough intrigue going on the outside to keep things going. There was a superplex to the outside, Shelton Benjamin and Cedric Alexander got at it, Akira Tozawa, the current 24/7 champion, jumped into the ring was thrown into the ring at some point and teased the idea that he might be rolled up by someone, so it was quite a cleverly booked match on the outside at least. Damien Priest picked up the win in conclusive fashion, wrapped everything up, and hopefully moves on from this. Finally, in our main event, Bobby Lashley was challenged by Kofi Kingston, who had already competed and beaten Randy Orton to make him look a little bit more legitimate leading into this one. Now, expectations naturally have to be low. The last time Kofi Kingston challenged for a WWE Championship, he lost in 8 seconds. However, this apparently was not for a WWE Championship. That should have made me more confident. It should have. The match itself was quite good. Kofi came in a house of fire and Bobby Lashley sold extremely hard for him. Later on, Bobby Lashley started to dominate but was distracted by Xavier Woods. Some very clever booking. Very clever booking and really well used considering who it was. Now, I don't think this will be long term or anything. However, it doesn't change the fact that due to interference from MVP, Xavier Woods and Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley took a punt to the stomach with the cane of MVP from McIntyre. Kofi rolled him up and won 1-2-3. A big moment for Kofi and a re-elevation towards the top level for him. If we're looking at new top level babyfaces, I have no problem with Kofi Kingston being re-added to that mix. I just don't personally see it happening for a little while. This also completely makes a lie of the idea that they had to break up the New Day. If this had been Big E, I'd have still marked out for it, and I think people would have enjoyed it even more. Personally, I think this was a very good choice by WWE, and I would like to have seen them do this on other occasions as well. This made the ending feel significant. However, we are leading into Hell in a Cell, and the plan is still very much to have Bobby Lashley versus Drew McIntyre. Raw this week was repetitive, with either rematches, matches we've seen almost 1,000 times, or building towards matches which we've already seen. That said, they managed to keep it interesting, particularly in the second half, with high quality matches, pushing people who aren't always on the show, such as Angel Garza, Ricochet and the like, and of course, putting Kofi Kingston back in the main event. As such, I think this Raw in particular is very worth watching, if you completely ignore everything that happened with Alexa Bliss. Not often I say that about Alexa Bliss, but this one has really run its course for me. I prefer Dark Alexa, Dark Bliss as it were, Lilith as it were. Just get her in the ring. Just get her back in the ring. The plan at the moment is very much for Alexa Bliss to be a key player going forwards according to WWE officials, so we'll see how that plays out. I've been Tom Colahue, please remember to click like, subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you next time.